All right. Welcome in, y'all. I say y'all all the time, and I don't know where exactly I got it from. The stereotype is like if you say y'all, you're in like Texas. I think of Sandy Cheeks from SpongeBob. Nevertheless, I am not Sandy Cheeks, nor am I from Texas, but I do say y'all. One of my many quirks. But welcome, y'all, you all of y'all, to this episode of Audio Dopeness, which is a podcast that I had started about, coming up on like 5 years ago, like 2016. I did Audio Dopeness when I was out in Tacoma, Washington, meeting with a lot of like other YouTubers that I had met through the internet through my initial YouTube endeavors. So yeah, I started that podcast back then, and it was just like an extension of like wanting to have a long form conversation with not just talking out loud by myself, but with other people, with other creative types, just to get like a different perspective on maybe certain things that were happening in real life, like in the day to day, but also just like having cool conversations with interesting people. And granted, today in this episode, I'm by myself, just kind of like setting things up with like where I'm at right now, just like where everything in the world feels like it's at right now, and just moving forward, what I want to accomplish with this podcast moving forward. But also, yeah, so this is just a way for me to express myself if it's just me, like it is today, but also I very much want to incorporate other people and other creators, other musicians, other artists, writers, people of all walks of life. I want to get them onto this show. I know I have a long way to go. Right now, I'm just like in the what is called the POFIS, which if you're watching this podcast, there is a sleeping cat who is also known as my girl Millie May, Mildred May, Millie Mill. She is a cat with many nicknames. She is sleeping on her cat tree just above the microphone, like in the camera's view, but like a little bit far back. This is the POFIS. So right now, this is definitely like beginning stages of a podcast. Wait, I just thought of an idea. Like a cat themed or pet themed podcast that's spelled out as podcast, PAWD, which is honestly too much of a layup. That's probably already a thing. But either way, this is the very beginning stages. This podcast, the goal is for this podcast to grow quite a bit, both with like audio quality, with video quality, with background, with guests. This is a very rudimentary form, if I'm using the word rudimentary correctly, of what I would want this podcast to grow in one day. So I wanted to throw that out there and just set up what I plan on talking about today. And for like full disclosure, most of these initial podcasts, they're not going to be like tremendously well produced, in the sense of like I'm not going to have a list of like X, Y, and Z things to talk about or things that I want to mention. Even when I originally did Audio Dopeness back in the day, it was a very just kind of like wing it type of show. And that's always been more of my style anyway. The longer the content goes, the more I'm just like, all right, I'll figure out what it is that I'm going to say once I get there. Because like I said, like this is just an extension of what's going on in the world, what's going on with me, and just all these things that are just bundled up in my mind. This is a way for me to just like word soup it out. And I've always enjoyed those types of podcasts as well, where, I don't really listen to Joe Rogan at all these days since he made the switch to Spotify. Nothing against Spotify or anything. I just like kind of have to go out of my way to listen to that one show on there. Hasn't really been worth it to me. But podcasts similar to the Joe Rogan experience, where you can just press play and you're just listening to like this long stream of words that makes you either feel like curious, or makes you feel entertained. You laugh at it, or maybe there's some other like emotion that a podcast will invoke that's a lot more natural and isn't as forced content wise. I've always enjoyed those types of shows, so maybe that's why I just naturally gravitate towards that type of podcast myself. But nonetheless, here I am. I'm going to talk about just like why I'm in this room recording this now, because it's not just something that kind of popped up out of the blue. This was, a long time coming, especially over the past year since COVID. That's annoying. Sorry about that. How do I? All right, that might happen again. I apologize. Actually, what if I just like put airplane mode? So, and it happened again. That's fine. This is fine. The this is fine meme. So I just recently, actually, real quick on that topic, I got a MacBook Pro and I had an iPhone prior. So like now everything is synced up, and this is like the second day I've had this amazing hardware. So I'm not used to it all, needless to say, as the text notifications and the text dings will probably happen again. So apologies. I'm going to do what I can on the back end to maybe like mitigate the audio spike that those probably caused. But if I can't do that, I apologize. And it won't happen next episode. But I guess if you're still listening 6 minutes in, you're probably like, that's probably not a deal breaker for you. But anyway, I'm going to talk about what happened over the past like year since COVID started, and like what brought me to wanting to finally just like say, all right, F it. I'm going to just record this content because it makes me feel good. And it's a way for me to continue to put myself out there where I haven't really been the best at doing that in the past few years. Then I did write down a couple bullet points, nothing too specific. So I'm going to talk about that. I already kind of mentioned plans for the show, but maybe getting like a little bit more specific with that. And then like close it out with just like this day in history. I don't really know if that's something I'll keep doing, but I want to like still stay like aware of like things that are going on. So maybe eventually I'll just do like more of a general news segment, maybe with a little twist. I'm not sure. We're just trying things out, and we'll go from there. But firstly, if you're watching this too, I got my awesome PlayStation mug with the handle as the PlayStation controller. Drinking some form of tea called Tazo, Energize. Very good. I already had a cup of coffee, so I don't want to like overdo that. Actually, it was pretty crazy. A few weeks ago, probably like a month ago at this point, I had a cup of coffee like past 5 o'clock, and when I was like drinking multiple cups of coffee like per day every day, probably like at least 2 years ago at this point, 2+ years ago, I was just like drinking way too much coffee. I was smoking too much. It was not good, not a good situation. But obviously in doing that, you gain a tolerance that is like not healthy for you. So like I'd have cups of coffee from like Dunkin' Donuts like past 5 o'clock, and like I would have no problem getting to sleep. So over the past year and a half, I've gotten a lot better at like managing my caffeine intake in particular. So a few weeks ago, I was like kind of feeling sluggish. I had like an old cold cup of Dunkin' coffee like in my car, and I was driving back. Had like a little bit of a commute, and I foolishly made the decision to like, all right, I'm gonna drink it. And there wasn't like a sip. There was like half of a cup still, which I don't know why I go to Dunkin' anyway. If like I take 2 sips and like I leave half of it and just finish it like the next day, it's a weird thing. But I did that, and like I was up until, no joke, like 4 o'clock in the morning. And part of it was because like mentally I was tired, but physically like I could not even like keep my eyes shut. And it's because I had caffeine just coursing through my veins, which brings up the fact that like caffeine, someone told me this, someone that I think it might have been Arthur K, who was actually one of the first guests I had on Audio Dopeness back in the day. Super talented dude. I think it was he that told me in that episode, maybe not, but like basically caffeine has like a half-life of like 12 hours. So like it takes upwards of 12 hours to get all the caffeine out of your body. So if you drink it at like 5 o'clock at night, you'll still have caffeine running through you at like 5 a.m. the next day, which is absolutely wild. But anyway, that was a rough day. And these are the tangents I'm probably going to get on quite a bit. That's going to put this podcast from like maybe a 30-minute experience to like an hour, which is totally fine. Like I'm all about more content. But anyway, why did I even bring that up? I don't even know. Where was I? Okay. Well, anyway, I'll circle back if I remember why the hell I brought up coffee. Oh well, tea. Tea is a good happy medium. Tea tastes nice. There's like this little. It's like a. I would actually equate tea, and maybe I'm totally like off base in saying this. I would equate it to what CBD is tea, and like actual like black coffee is like a sativa strain of cannabis. That might actually be like one of the better analogies I've ever come up with. And if maybe this isn't as good as I think it is, please let me know. I'm not the type of person who's going to be so committed to these like spur of the moment, like, oh, I think this was a great analogy. I think this was a great idea. You can't convince me otherwise. I am trying to be a lot more open-minded than that. So I can be swayed in the other direction. Having said that, you're going to need to really convince me because like my intuition is really telling me like that was a fire analogy. So I want to hold tight to that. So just know if you come at me like with, hey man, I think your CBD tea coffee sativa analogy was whack, you're going to need to really sell me on that. Otherwise, I'm going to keep following that. But anyway, why am I now getting to like podcasting and like seeking to grow a podcast? So I'll start with like most recently, like I said, I bought a MacBook Pro and I had a microphone, this Blue Snowball that I'm using. I've had this microphone for years. So the real problem that I faced like from a technological standpoint is like hardware wise, my old laptop, which is like this hunk of garbage that's like right here. This thing would literally take like a half hour when I started up to even like get me to. I couldn't even open like a notepad. Like that's how bad this laptop was. And I just never had enough, not never, but for a while I didn't have enough like conviction in like, okay, I'm going to be consistent with a podcast to justify like buying a new laptop. And I didn't want to buy something that like in a year, 2 years would just like break down. So originally I thought about like building a PC, and then most recently I was like, you know what? Like some of the parts like were a little bit harder to like lock down where I would get them and where I would get them for like a price that made sense. I don't know if because of COVID with like supply chains and all that, I'm not educated on that enough, but I've heard that might have been why like, you know, a graphics card that I was looking at was like double the price than what it should have been. But basically what I'm saying is building a computer was a little more complex for my liking right now, and I wanted to just like, all right, let me just be able to tomorrow go out and record something, edit something, write something, use a computer without any sort of technological delays or just unnecessary hardships. So MacBook Pros are awesome, and I'm still even learning how to use this thing. But yeah, so that's also one of like the more immediate reasons why I just decided like, all right, I'm going to do this because technologically and physically I can. Now, the more deeper reasons for why now is actually, let me start with when COVID happened. So when COVID first started and shutdowns were put in place, people had to quarantine and all that, I was working for a radio station. And I might have mentioned this like on a video on my channel before, but I was working at the radio station. It was like the best job I'd ever had. I got hired as like a promotions coordinator, which is a fancy term or title for like the dude who would like set up the equipment for the radio DJs that would show up at like a Dunkin' Donuts or like a car dealership to do a live remote broadcast. It was my job to go to the radio station, pack up all the equipment in the radio themed van, drive the van to the remote location, set up all the equipment so that way when the DJ got there, they just had to like log in real quick, press play, and boom. So that was my job, to help set up the equipment. So I got hired to do that, and that was like the only thing I did at first. So it was definitely like a gig type thing. It was like whenever there was a promotion or like a live event or live remote, they would have people like sign up for it, and you know, your boy being the type of dude who like is really into something, or when they're into something, when I'm into something, I'm really into it. I would sign up for like everything, just as a way to like, all right, I want more. This is where I want to work. I want to be around creative people. This is fulfilling. I don't care if it's a few hours a week. I'm going to be there every time. So I did that for a little bit, and eventually, like, I kept trying to find reasons to be in the studio longer, like to be in the building longer. So like I offered to help with like front desk duties, just like odds and ends things like organizing like the storage room, just like weird random stuff that they needed help with, like they needed an extra pair of hands. I did. There was even one day where I helped the bookkeeper like organize all of the invoices and everything, which is like, it's not like wasn't groundbreaking work, but I liked the fact that I was there more, and I liked being there, and I liked that it showed them, hey, like I'm willing to help out in whatever way possible. Yeah, I have these like specific video and writing background, and I have these experiences, but like I'm not better than doing this. I'm not better than helping the accountant. I'm not better than like calling up certain vendors to see if they want to rent a space at like a wedding show. Like I wasn't better than all that. And the more that I was there, the more that I got to know, you know, some of the radio anchors, the DJs, some of the bloggers, the marketing people, the sales people. I was able to better like immerse myself in that world and with those people. And I think it made a difference, because when there were more opportunities available, which I will get into very shortly, they were like, oh, well, let's have Tyler. Why not Tyler? Like, he's already here. Let's see if he wants to help us out. So by like a few months in, I kept like not pressing, but I kept like bringing up like the idea of like writing, because I love writing. I'm just gonna say I'm a great writer. It comes very naturally to me. I have a way with words, as well as I am with like verbalizing these things, like with my actual voice. I think having the platform to like type something out and like edit things and try and find the best way to like to show what it is that I'm trying to say with words, I think I do very well with it. And it's a satisfying experience, like when I finish a good piece and someone reads it and they're affected by it, because, you know, it's easier for someone to listen or watch something. It's harder for them to like read something and stay locked in and actually like read it in your own voice. That's a hard thing to do. And I take joy in that. It's fun for me when I'm like writing something that I'm interested in. So I kept getting that bug in their ear, and I eventually like built somewhat of a relationship with the like the lead editor, the person who like reads all of people's blogs and like is basically like the judge, jury, executioner for like what gets posted and what doesn't. And the only reason I'm describing this person like that, and I'm just bad with titles. Like I'm not exactly sure what people's titles were, but I know like what they did, if that makes sense. So I wrote a couple of like blog samples and like submitted them, and like before I knew it, like they were published, and I got to do that for a little bit, which was awesome. I loved it. Like I remember the day I first saw one of my blogs published, and I got feedback from it, and it was amazing. I was like, wow, like I didn't go to school, like I didn't graduate with a degree in this. It was very fulfilling and gratifying, because like to me it proved like I didn't need to graduate with a degree. I didn't need to go to like this very prestigious school. I just needed to do what it was that I had been doing and like prove it, like prove that my writing is worthy of that. So I got my foot in the door and just kind of willed myself into that amazing opportunity where like I got my stuff published, which was an amazing feeling. And the fact that like this radio station from where I'm from is like the radio station was even more of something that made me proud. So not only did I get my writing published, there came a day where I remember I was in there helping out with I think it was with prize distributions. Like, so radio stations, what they do is they have certain prizes that they'll give away. Whether it be like through like call-ins, like, oh, be the 9th caller for this prize, or, you know, enter to win, like, oh, if you go on the website and, you know, submit your name and all that, whatever, you could randomly win, or you'll be entered to randomly win, you know, $50 to this restaurant. So we would have like a whole database of like people that would put their put their names in the hat for these prizes, as well as like a whole laundry list of actual prizes. So some people, they would win like a Domino's gift card. They would come in the next day, and we'd have a whole book of those. So you need someone that would be in charge of the book to say, okay, John Smith, who won the Dunkin' Donuts gift card yesterday, he came in this day, signed for it, and then I released the prize. Cool. That was like one of the in-office duties that I had when I was there. So I remember I was doing that, and they needed the marketing person actually needed like a male voice to do a certain radio commercial, and I think it was for like a pools and spas place. I'm not exactly sure, but they needed like a male voice for it. So I remember they were like, "You want to try it?" And I was like, "Me? Yeah, absolutely, I'll try it." And I went in there, and it was kind of rough at first. Like I think I was like too nervous to really give like that good first effort. But I remember being very like I wanted it. Like I wanted to go in there, and I was like, all right, I'm going to kill it. It's going to be one take. It's going to be gold. And I remember like even amping up my voice a little bit more. And I needed to be coached through it, which was fine. They were like, okay, but now try it like this. Now do it like this. And like I got a cut of it, like a cut of the commercial, and like it sounded okay. But I remember I didn't finish the whole thing. So I was a little like walking away. I was like, damn, I don't think... Like, obviously, like, they're not going to just use my voice for that one part of it. I think they were just trying me out, and it didn't work out for that one. But a week or so after, I got another crack at a different one, and that one actually ended up on the radio. I remember being in my room, and I was on the radio app on my phone, and I was like waiting through commercials to try and hear it, because they told me like, hey, it's probably going to be on this day, and it's like the first day for it. And eventually I heard it, and I was so ecstatic. I was geeking out so hard. So as this like 24-year-old kid who just like got hired as a part-time street teamer, promotions coordinator, just like helping out a few hours a week, setting up equipment, eventually like I found my way in there like multiple days a week, helping out with like odds and ends around the office, helping out with the big wedding show that they did, like organize all that. And then eventually got like my blogs published and got my actual voice on the radio doing commercials. This was all in the span of like 5 to 6 months. So it was like, it went from like 0 to 100 real quick. And then COVID happened. And I remember the duties like changed pretty drastically. It went from like there being, I had signed up for like a handful of like remotes over that month, because not all of them were like, all right, like they wouldn't book these things too far out in advance. They would kind of just like, all right, like a new month is here. These are all the remotes we have so far. More will probably be added. So I had like my name signed up for like every remote in that month. And then all of a sudden with COVID happening, like I remember I was going to be on my way to a remote on this one day in particular, and it got changed like last second because his email went out, and COVID was forcing like quarantines and shutdowns, and like the restaurant that we went to couldn't have like a certain amount of people anymore. And all of a sudden like that need for like street teamers, for promotions coordinators, was like gone. So the focus then became like, all right, how are we going to change protocol to fit these new like COVID guidelines? Like that was when we were moving into like the phases of like, okay, phase 1 is this, phase 2, all right, whatever, all that. So they shut down the studio to listeners, to customers. So I mentioned earlier that part of my job was like controlling the book for prizes. So when people came in, I would like have them sign a paper and release the prize to them, and then update our database. So we weren't having people in to pick up prizes anymore. So one of the last things I did, and I didn't know it at the time that this would be one of the last things I did, was calling all of the people who had prizes like to their names but hadn't picked them up yet. I needed to call all of them up to get either their address to send them the prizes, or to ask them like, hey, and this is wicked funny. So I remember when like COVID first happened, I had no idea, and no one did, like how long this would be a thing for. So I remember when I'd be calling these people, and I'd be like, Hey, John. This is Tyler. I'm calling from Fun 107. How are you? Okay, cool. So I'm calling because you actually, as you know, you won the $50 Charred Oak Tavern gift card. So because of the new COVID guidelines and restrictions, we're not currently allowing people to come in to pick up their prizes. So I wanted to call you to see if you wanted us to mail that to you, or if, and this is the funny part, I said, or if, it could be a few weeks, it could be a month, if you want to wait to come and pick up the prize. And actually, a lot of them said, like, yeah, I'll just wait. That's fine. So, okay, update the system. Some of them wanted it mailed out, and that was cool, whatever. But I just thought that was funny. Like, I remember literally thinking, like, yeah, maybe a couple weeks. It'll be fine. Like, COVID, it'll be over before we know it, whatever. And eventually, I was at home one day, and this was like when office hours got cut like severely. Like I wasn't in for like 2 weeks straight. I got a call from one of the radio hosts, actually one of the guys that like hired me, like really really awesome guy, and it was a terrible phone call that he had to make, and a terrible phone call that I had to take. But he said, "Hey Tyler, I just wanted to give you a call. This really sucks. I don't want to have to say this, but because of COVID, we're having national layoffs, and unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go." And I was absolutely devastated. Devastated. I was so bummed out. And that really sucked because like I felt like for those 5-6 months, like I had been grinding. I had a purpose. I was around people that I loved to be around that were like challenging me to be better, but also that shared these same interests. And I just like looked forward to going to work. There were a lot of days where I had to wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to be at like the radio station for 6, for a remote for 7. And like those were awesome days. Like I remember those days so clearly. And yeah, and I felt like I was on an upward trend, like an upward path of, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. These people like me. They like the quality of my work. This is satisfying, fulfilling to me, as well as challenging. This is awesome. I need more of this. And I was on the path to get more of it. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened, something out of my control. The rug got swept up from under me, and I was like devastated by it. I'll just say it like that. And rather than like try and find more work within radio and within like the entertainment industry, I think I was looking so much into the fact that like there's no more concerts, there's no more like in-person meetings, like you can't even really like go to stores with people anymore. Like entertainment, you couldn't go to the movies. Entertainment had totally shifted, and there was no end in sight for with COVID. So I like at that point, I just needed to stay busy because I felt like I was going to go crazy just being at home. And at the time, I was living with my parents. I felt like I just needed something to like take my mind off of that. And I didn't want to like risk getting hurt again so quickly and so soon into the COVID shutdowns and all that. So I was just looking for a job. And one of the people that I actually met at the radio station, she had recommended me to of all things, to a construction company in my hometown. And my logic at the time for I was literally just like, all right, it would be a full-time job. They're hiring during COVID, so they must be doing okay. They're an essential business. And there was really no other thought to it as far as like when I took the job. So I took that job. I was a scheduler, so it was my job to call leads about like getting free estimates for like roof, window, siding, like construction stuff. So I got that job, and it was a job. Like, I'm a very optimistic person by nature, I feel like, at least like in a professional sense. So I saw the fact that like, oh, well, these people, like, they're giving me more opportunity. Like, they are valuing the work that I do, and that was kind of like all the more reason that I needed to like, all right, let me try and get more hours. Let's, I'm going to do better. Okay. And I did that. And eventually, cause I don't care enough to get too into the specifics of like why this place didn't work out, but it basically didn't work out. I I worked my way into a different position, and the position wasn't all that I had thought it was going to be, and I just didn't see exactly eye to eye with the business. So I was looking for a different job, and I found a job in a construction company, but for a national construction company, like one of the largest remodelers like in the entire country. I got a job as so the official job title was customer development representative, which is a title for a door-to-door person, a canvasser. So it was essentially my job to go door to door, different territories around Massachusetts, around Rhode Island, and try and schedule people for free estimates. So instead of calling them, now I had to go door to door. And I did that for a few months, and I took that job because I saw an in into the world of sales, which I had never thought about getting into sales prior to my intro into construction. But somewhere along that first job that I had in construction, I was talking to like some of the salespeople there, and they knew about like my YouTube channel. They knew I was good with people. I was a good communicator, good speaker. So they gave me this idea of like, hey, like you would be good at sales. Like you should get into sales. So at this newer company, the national one, I took the job as being a door-to-door salesman, a door-to-door like, estimate scheduler, as like an intro to, all right, if I can do that, if I can prove my worth there, maybe I'll get into sales eventually. So that happened. Earlier this year, I got accepted into a sales training program with that company, and I went through like some hoops to actually make that happen. I had a meeting, or I had like a dinner with the boss of that department, made a great impression on him, and then like got bumped up into an earlier sales class that I hadn't originally qualified for because it was just too soon. I had to like memorize all these scripts within like a week's time frame, which was a very hard thing to do. I stressed out so much. It normally takes people 2 weeks. I did it in 1. And I did that. I took my like script test and I passed it. So that gave me the entryway into that earlier sales class, and I started doing that. Now, where this takes a turn and how I relate this into why I decided to do a podcast, if you're still listening at this point, of course, is that the weekend before I started the sales training, as I take a sip of my now lukewarm tea, the weekend before I got into this sales training, mind you, at this point, we're coming up on a full calendar year since I got laid off from the radio station. I was on Facebook, and I saw the same person that recommended me to that first construction company once I got laid off from the radio station. So the same person that works for the radio station still posted something that said, hey, our AM station, so there's FM radio, AM radio, their AM radio station is looking to hire a full-time news anchor and news writer from these hours. Reach out to this person for more information. And this person was the person that published my blogs, who I had like a relationship with in the past. So I saw this the weekend before I got into sales training, and I was like, how about that? A full year. I go full circle. And like I started in this field that like I never had any interest in, that I wouldn't be in if it weren't for COVID and weren't for these shutdowns. I'm on that path, not even a full year into, like it was 6 months since I had like the I want to get into sales bug. It felt poetic to me. And sure enough, that Monday I go into the first day of sales training, and by the end of the day, Tuesday, my head's already spinning. I'm like, am I really gonna like go and sell windows? Like, this is so far from what I was doing in radio, the last media company that I was in, the freelance work that I've done, the professional YouTube stuff that I've done. Like, this couldn't be anything further from what it is that I wanted to do and what I saw myself doing. So being 2 days into it, I was like, all right, well, I'm still here. I'm still doing this. Like maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe I'm just nervous. I'm scared. I'm not gonna like maybe these are all just like fears of irrationality. Give it more time. Then like Wednesday comes, and a weird part of the story is that Wednesday, the first week, I went to a Market Basket, which is a grocery store. Maybe people, I don't know. I don't know if Market Basket's like a national thing or just like New England. I have no idea. I went to a grocery store and went to their like, they have like a section where they can like make sandwiches for you like on the spot, like hot lunches. And I got a ham and cheese panini with lettuce and then like some chips and a drink or whatever. And I ate that, right? Okay, go through the rest of the day of training. And then the next morning, as the night before, I was up very late studying, freaking out because sales training at that company, every day you're given new material, but also you have to like get tested on stuff that you learned the day before. And that's the format the whole time. High stress, you're learning a lot, you're taking in so much. So that night I was up very late studying, and then that morning I woke up pretty early studying again. And I remember my girlfriend she got me some toast and a cup of coffee. I had a slice of toast and one sip of coffee, and then made a beeline to the bathroom. I got sick. I kept trying to study. I got sick again. I went into work that day for training, and during the whole role play session, we're practicing the stuff from the night before. I'm fighting the impending I'm fighting like the feeling of passing out. And I wasn't sure if it was like physical or mental at that point. I was convinced that morning I was probably so stressed out that I was making myself sick. So we go through the role play. Thankfully, I didn't get sick in there in that room, and I didn't pass out. But the first break that we take, I feel my body getting so weak. So like I asked, because I didn't bring a lunch that day because I felt sick leaving. So I was like, I'm not gonna bring food, which was dumb. But I asked if anyone has any food. So someone gives me like this peanut butter crunch bar or whatever. I take one bite, beeline to the bathroom, and I almost get sick like on the way there. It was like a little bit of a walk there. And it was immediate. It was awful. Like it was terrible. And then throughout the next few hours, I got sick. And when I say got sick, it's a polite way of me saying like I got sick. I got sick like 3 times in my time just at work, with it 2 times in the morning. And then I remember I had like an hour and 15-minute commute back home. The whole drive home, it's rush hour traffic, pretty much from Boston down to where I live now. I'm fighting the feeling of like I'm almost falling asleep when I'm driving. So I get home, I park. As soon as I get inside the house, I'm shivering, I'm sweating. My head hurts like absolute crazy. My body aches, and I'm feeling nauseous, like I can't eat anything. So I later determined that I had food poisoning. It wasn't stress related. So this was just like an extra curveball in this whole week of my first week of sales training. But where it turns is like, okay, like I tell them, I have food poisoning. It sucks. And I know I basically like I have to make up more going into that weekend because I wasn't able to study that night because I was sick. Okay, so I couldn't get tested on the new material the next day. Thus, need to study more and catch up over the weekend. So I remember waking up. Real quick. So before we get into the weekend, on Friday, so I got sick Thursday morning, and I started feeling like a little better on Friday. So I go in Friday, and then at the end of the day that Friday, we have one-on-ones with the boss of sales, and he asks me, so how are you feeling? Are you still feeling good about the bump up, like about the promotion? And in that moment, I was like, I gave him this look of like, well, like, yeah, but like, is it normal like to feel like I just feel overwhelmed? And like, yeah, part of that, obviously I got set back with the physical stuff, and that sucked. But even before that, like I felt like I wasn't grasping the material. Like I wasn't letting it sink in. I wasn't absorbing the stuff. I am a better like memorizer and scripter than I am like if you give me like material that like you need to understand what it is you're saying, like why you're saying what you're saying and not what it is you're saying. I tend to struggle with that, especially if I'm not emotionally invested in what the material is. So basically I wasn't feeling like invested, and I wasn't feeling moved by any of the material. I wasn't letting it actually absorb into me. So I told him that. And I asked him like, is it normal after someone's first week in your experience for them to like question what it is that you saw in them as a potential salesperson? And he answered that with like, what I saw in you was someone who is a great speaker. You understand people. You would have a great connection with homeowners in the home. So he reiterated that's what he saw in me when he first met me, and then the conversations we had after that. And he brought up this point that like I took home that night and then the next day and really like chewed on it. And it was the topic of motivation. He was like, I know you have the people skills. What you would need to show to me, and this is not something you can tell me, it's something that over time you'd be showing me, is do you have the motivation? Essentially, do you have the motivation to get through this sales training, to get through your first X appointments, the motivation to be a great salesperson and to make all that money? And I totally changed like how I thought about like what it is that I was doing. Because like initially, my logic for taking a sales job was, well, if I can make a lot of money, then in my free time, I can do what I want to do creatively. I can do this podcast. I can write. I can do all these things. And that first week of training and being on like a sales shadow where I got to follow a salesperson on their appointment and seeing it more firsthand and realizing like this is something that like for the foreseeable future, like this is my life. I would be on call essentially like from the moment I wake up until like 7:30 at night. And if I get issued a nightly appointment, I'm not home until like 12 o'clock. And that's at the minimum 6 days a week. So I had this glimpse into like what my life would be like if, say, I did get through the initial sales training and I did make it through my first 6 months and then got trained on other products. And when I had that conversation with the boss about like what's your motivation, it made me think about like when I saw the job posting on Facebook about the radio station, where like a year ago I was not working full-time hours. I was not making life-changing money, but my motivation was there. I had no hesitation when I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the studio for 6, to be at a job for 7. Like my motivation was to create and was to share that with people, was to be around other creative people, was to like positively affect other people through things like music, through things like blogs, through things like video content and interviews with bands and just discussions with cool people. Like my motivation has never been money. My motivation for getting into sales wasn't even about money. Really, like my motivation was like, oh, so then I can have the ability to, in my free time, do whatever it is that I want to do creatively. So that Saturday, after my first week of training, I woke up feeling not right. And that time, it wasn't physical. That time, it was mental. Because I realized at that time, I was fooling myself. Like I was trying to convince myself that this path was something that would motivate me and that would enable me to do these things creatively. When in reality, this path for me, other people can make this work, but for me, that path would have compromised what it is that I'm truly motivated by. And once I realized that, I had a conversation with my brother, with my best friends, with my parents, with my girlfriend, and I really made it so easy for me to like, okay, like I'm not where I need to be. And I took that Facebook post as a sign of like, okay, the end is now in sight. Like not just this radio station, other radio stations, other media companies, other places that are creatively driven, they're now on the up. People see now more than ever that like we need art, we need writing, we need music, we need videos, we need content. They see that now more than ever because we went through a full year of like all of the all of the headlines and all of the news, and we were all so painfully aware of like how alone we were. And the amazing thing about art and about writing and about music is that it's a way to connect other people over whatever, like over sports, over cats, over YouTubers, over podcasts. Like this art is a way that we can all realize like we have more in common than we ever would have thought before. And that, like being a part of that is my motivation. So I left that job, and I left that job without hesitation. They were trying to like, convince me like, oh, we think you'd be great at this still. Like, I think, you're not giving it a fair shake. Just stick it out. And for me, the rationale was like as simple as like, no, like I know the path I'm supposed to be on. If it weren't for this crazy once in a lifetime pandemic, I would still be at the radio station. I would be one of the people in consideration for that full-time job that I just found out about on Facebook last week, a full year after I got laid off. Like I need to be on that path ASAP because I don't know what's going to happen in a week. I don't know what's going to happen in a month. But if that opportunity is there now, I need to take it. And I can't dip one foot in and one foot out because I've never been that kind of person. Like if I had one foot in the construction business and one foot out, I wouldn't have had this realization 6 months into this job with this national company. If I didn't put 2 feet into the radio station when I did and basically was like all hands on deck, whatever you need, whenever you need it, I wouldn't have been featured on the radio commercials 5 months in. I wouldn't have had my blogs published 5 months in. I wouldn't have had as much of an impact on the other people to the point where a year after the fact, they would still remember me as like, yeah, of course I remember you. I'm glad to hear from you. Like send me over your resume and I'll take a look at it. So thus we are here now. I left that job. Sales is not for me. I'm meant to do this. I'm meant to write. I'm meant to connect with other people. I'm meant to be around other creative people, whether it be radio DJs, other artists, other writers, other video makers, other YouTubers. Like the more of my time that I spend doing this, the more fulfilled that I'm going to be, the more motivated I'm going to be. And I already feel that. Like I already feel that now. And I'm just like in my room by myself talking out loud, like to myself. And I'm happier doing this, truly. Like I'm happier doing this for free than like I ever was any day when I was knocking on doors. Any day that I was like calling people to try and schedule estimates. Like I'm glad that I had those experiences because I met a lot of awesome people. And honestly, like if I didn't go through all that, I wouldn't be in the position that I am now here today, having met the people that I did meet, and having this much more conviction in like the path that I was on being the right path for me. And it's just this like, it's just like this, there's this wow factor of like truly like if it wasn't for this crazy pandemic that nobody could have seen coming, no one could have done anything about, I would still be there. And I can't dwell on like the what ifs, but it's just a testament to like what I'm going to do now. So now I'm back. I'm recording these podcasts. I'm working on more writing. I'm working on more videos. I'm working on getting myself back into a radio station, hopefully the same one as before, but if not, there are other ones out there. And if not a radio station, being around an entity, an organization, like a business whose motivation lines up to what mine is. And that's storytelling. That's being engaging. That's connecting with other artists, sharing other people's message, other people's writings, music, videos, art. Because it's those outlets that like in times of crisis, like people can lean on. Like we all have like our favorite shows and podcasts that like when we're feeling a certain type of way, you know, we kind of get to lean back on, but not just in bad times, but like we all have stuff that we like to watch and that we like to like content wise that we like to absorb when we're feeling good. And that's something that, like, everyone has their unique style, their unique flavor, and the amount of possibilities that you have as far as like making videos, making podcast writings, like it's all subjective, and you can go in unlimited directions with it. And that's my motivation. That's why I'm here. And I needed to go through that whole year of like just sticking with one path. In this case, it was construction. In order for the clock to sort of run out on COVID and for things to kind of return back to normal, and for me to get myself back on the path that I was proud of and that I was building a name for myself in. Something that I can see myself doing in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, as well as right now, which is more important. Like, what makes me feel good now? This. So it's as simple as the more of this I do, and the more I can be around other people who like to do this, the better I'm going to feel. And the rest, I've always believed, will figure itself out. So that was my journey in about 50 minutes. I know earlier in the show I mentioned plans for this show. So real quick, I'm just going to like sort of recap. So until I can like technically figure out, and maybe, I mean, if you're listening to this, maybe I'm just going to like speak this out into existence. So the problem I'm running into now is like, obviously it's not easy to just like, okay, I want this person on the show, let me go and hang out with them. Like, we're still in the days of COVID, but also as far as like convenience goes, having virtual guests on the show would definitely be a big plus. So the problem that I'm running into is I know what I can do to capture video for them, get them on FaceTime, and then there's like a source you can add with OBS, which is the software that I'm using right now. You can do like a video capture for like the screen itself. And I have like a specific source for my microphone, my Snowball. What I don't know how to do is to capture their audio through its own input source. So I'm not having to play it through my computer and have it be picked up on my microphone to cause an echo. So that's one of the technical aspects I'm trying to run into, like how to figure that out. But I definitely, part of what this show will be about is having new people on, having guests on. And moving forward, I want to just maybe segment this more, so it's not just like 50 minutes of me talking by myself, or even like, if it's with a guest, I want to do something maybe a little bit more than just like talking about nothing for an hour. So maybe something like, this day in history, or like a trivia thing. I'm not exactly sure, but I want to figure that out as well. I also want to figure out how I can maybe react to like videos, like basically have other videos like on YouTube or the internet capture my like web browser as a way to like commentate over things that I'm seeing, but while like still making it like a virtual thing. Like, I want to have other guests on. So those are some of the plans for this show, and it's just going to be an audio experience. Like, I want this to be something that you can just like, you can definitely watch, but I want it to be something that you can just be listening to and still have a good time. And if you're not learning something, maybe like feel a certain type of way, or just walk away with some perspective or some emotion that is productive for you. And I want that to be the general theme of these. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what the plans are for the show as far as I know right now. The only other last thing I wanted to go through was this day in history. So can I do this? Okay, cool. So this day in history, so today is March 19th. Let's see if this, 1687. The French explorer La Salle is murdered by his own men while searching for the mouth of the Mississippi that's not even entertaining. That's just like, that's history. I guess you can learn something, but like, what do we do with this information now, Ty? I don't know. I don't know. Millie, do you know? Nope. Nor does she care to know. Okay, so that's not a fun one. Okay, another one with on the death of William III of Orange and Stuart. Okay, this segment's not off to a good start. This might be scrapped after this first episode. what is it? Succeeds to the throne of England, Scotland, and Ireland. I don't care about that. 1702. It's basically like 100 years ago. It's more than that. It's like, what is that? 300 years ago? 320 years ago? In 1822, Boston is incorporated as a city. How about that? 1822, Boston. Boston is so poorly laid out. Like, I'm sure you've seen like the bird's eye view of like New York compared to Boston. New York, everything's numbered. It's all parallel, or yeah, parallel lines and streets. Everything, it's like, you need to go there. Okay, there's a mathematical equation to how to get from like 19th and 2nd to like 25th and 4th. But like Boston, it's all like, they just said F it. Like, we'll figure all this out on the fly. And that just makes all the sense in the world. I think Boston is that kind of place. You're just like, we'll figure all that out. So 1822, Boston is incorporated as a city. So wait, so does that mean it was like, was it a town before then? Like, what's the threshold? Like, what's the requirement for a town to be considered a city? So that's actually good. I'm going to Google that. What is the threshold? Let's see. What? I really should invest in like an actual mouse. I have like a mouse, but it's a wireless one. So what I need to do is like, because it's like it's like a regular USB. So I need to get like an adapter for like the USB 3.0, whatever it's called, ports that the MacBooks have. So basically what I'm saying is that because I'm using my blue Snowball microphone with this MacBook, I've already used my adapter piece. So, and I only have one, so I can't use a mouse too. What is the requirement for a town to become a city? Let's see. Common population definitions for an urban area range between 1,500 and 50,000 people for an city or town. Wait, so what's the difference between a city and a town? Thoughtco.com. A town is typically an unincorporated community, services provided by the county governments, no governmental powers. A city, incorporated community, services provided by the city government, governmental powers delegated by the state. Okay, so a town is like private, and a city is like government, state government, I think. I don't know. Well, hey, that sounds right. In the U.S., incorporated city is legally defined. Okay, a city is legally defined. A town isn't. Boom. We are solving things on the show from day one. Can't say you didn't learn anything. 1879. Okay, more death. Geez, all history is like death. And that might actually be like the most true thing I've ever said, and I probably don't even realize it. The U.S. Senate in 1903 ratifies the Cuban Treaty, gaining naval bases in Guantanamo and Bahia Honda. Okay. I want to find something. Okay, 1918. Congress authorizes daylight savings time. Daylight savings time is a scam. I have no backing to saying that at all. It just feels right. Seriously though, like, we just lose an hour and then like we gain one back. So like nothing happened then. I don't know. I'm just salty that pretty recently like I lost an hour. Right? Because what springs forward. Yeah, I lost an hour of sleep recently. I'm not happy about that. Okay, more death. The state of Nevada legalized gambling on this day in 1931. How about that? Fun fact, the first time and only time I've ever been to Nevada was in Las Vegas, was when I was 20. Right before I turned 21. So my experience with Las Vegas was me just like walking around. Went to like a restaurant and like a couple of like arcades, I think. More death. Okay, agreements to avoid death. Okay. More death. Jeez. All right. Well, this was not a good segment. This is definitely gonna write that on the board. Don't do this day in history. Don't do this day in history. Okay, so that's all I had for today. This was just sort of like a setting the table, if you will. And I'm feeling good about this. I'm going to do everything that I can to figure out how I can have guests on in a way that doesn't compromise audio quality. I'm going to be reaching out to like other people that I know that are like more tech savvy. Hopefully they can help me. And I want to shoot to, at the very least, do this like once a week, probably every Friday. So having said that too, part of like the plans for the show, I want to incorporate more sound, like maybe get like a theme song or just intro song, updated like graphics and all that. These are things that I'll just have to like plug and play and add as I go. If I start treating this like I did in the past when I was like trying to juggle like, day jobs with this and just like other stuff, like basically the times where I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, I still, with the 1 foot that I did have into podcasting, I was trying to get everything figured out at once before I started it, and then it resulted in me never starting it. So I'm doing the opposite. I'm going to just like do what I can now, realize that like this is good audio quality, you can see me very well, and we'll make those tweaks as we go, and we'll do it together as a team. But that's all I got for you today. I appreciate you listening, and I will talk to you next Friday. Peace.